they can't look at you anymore isn't strength, and it isn't moving on. It's shame. Not loud shame, not apologetic shame, but the kind that silences, erases, and makes someone disappear rather than face who they became with you. If this resonates, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, because understanding these patterns isn't about staying stuck. It's about finally being free from the confusion. Narcissistic shame is fundamentally different from guilt, because it does not arise from recognizing harm done to another person. It arises from a threat to the self they are desperately trying to protect. Guilt requires empathy and responsibility, an ability to say, "I did something wrong," while still holding a stable sense of self. Shame in the narcissistic structure is experienced as "I am wrong," and that distinction is catastrophic. Their identity is built on superiority, control, and the belief that they are exceptional or entitled to special treatment. When something exposes the gap between that image and reality, it does not register as a mistake that can be repaired. It feels like annihilation. This is why narcissistic shame is so dangerous to their internal world. It collapses the narrative they rely on to function. Because their self-worth is externalized and dependent on validation, admiration, or dominance, shame hits at the core of their psychological survival system. They are not equipped with an internal buffer that allows self-reflection without falling apart. Instead of processing discomfort, they experience an overwhelming sense of defectiveness, inadequacy, or exposure. This is not conscious in a thoughtful way. It is visceral, sudden, and intolerable. The nervous system reacts as if under threat. Fight, flight, freeze, or distort reality become the automatic responses. This is why accountability rarely follows. To accept responsibility would require staying present with shame long enough to integrate it, and that level of emotional endurance simply is not there. The mind rushes to defend itself by blaming, minimizing, rewriting events, or erasing the person who triggered the exposure. The goal is not truth, growth, or repair. The goal is survival of the identity. When you stop validating the false self, when you see through the performance, or when you no longer play the assigned role, you destabilize the structure holding that identity together. The shame that surfaces is not instructive, it is disorganized. It does not move inward toward insight, it pushes outward towards avoidance. This is why disappearance, silence, or emotional cutoff often follow moments of clarity or boundary setting. It is not calm withdrawal. It is retreat from an internal collapse they do not have the tools to face. Avoidance in narcissistic dynamics is often misread as indifference, healing, or emotional detachment. But it is actually a defensive maneuver designed to reduce psychological threat. When a narcissist avoids you, it is not because you no longer matter, it is because your presence activates something they cannot regulate. Avoidance is a way to control internal chaos by controlling external exposure. If they can't dominate the narrative, manage the perception, or extract validation, the safest option becomes disappearance. Indifference would imply emotional neutrality and internal stability. Avoidance implies the opposite. It signals that contact with you triggers discomfort, agitation, or destabilization. This discomfort may show up as anxiety, anger, irritability, or a vague sense of being off, but beneath it is the awareness that they are not in control of how they are seen by you anymore. That loss of control is deeply threatening to a personality structure that relies on dominance, admiration, or emotional leverage to maintain equilibrium. Avoidance allows them to preserve a fragile self-image without having to confront contradiction. By not engaging, they don't have to answer questions, tolerate your perspective, or risk being seen accurately. Distance becomes a way to freeze the last version of themselves that felt powerful. It is a psychological containment strategy. If they don't interact with you, they don't have to integrate the reality of what happened between you or who they were in that dynamic. This is why avoidance often appears suddenly, especially after you set boundaries, stop reacting, or express clarity. The shift isn't caused by something you said wrong. It's caused by the fact that engagement no longer serves their emotional regulation. When interaction stops providing reassurance or control, it becomes a source of exposure. Avoidance then functions as self-protection, not healing. The nervous system plays a role here. For someone who lacks emotional integration, exposure to shame, loss of power, or relational failure triggers a threat response. Avoidance reduces stimulation, lowers internal arousal, and restores a sense of safety. Even if that safety is built on denial, they may tell themselves they don't care, that they've moved on, or that you were insignificant, not because it's true, but because the mind needs a story that justifies the retreat. Understanding this reframes the silence. It is not the absence of impact. It is evidence of impact that cannot be metabolized, processed, or resolved without confronting parts of the self they have spent a lifetime avoiding. When clarity enters a narcissistic dynamic, it functions like sudden light in a darkened room, revealing details that were always there but carefully obscured. Narcissistic patterns depend on confusion, emotional fog, and shifting narratives to maintain control. As long as you doubt yourself, over-explain, or try to fix what feels wrong, the dynamic remains intact. The moment you gain clarity, you stop absorbing distortion. You see the inconsistencies, the manipulations, the emotional double standards. That awareness alone begins to dismantle the structure they rely on. Your clarity does not need to be spoken to be threatening. It is often sensed rather than heard. When your reactions change, when you stop defending yourself against accusations that never fit, when you no longer scramble to restore harmony at your own expense, the narcissistic system registers danger. You are no longer playing the role that stabilized their inner world. The illusion of control weakens, and with it, the ability to maintain the false self they present to others and to themselves. What makes this especially destabilizing is that clarity cannot be argued with in the way confusion can. Gaslighting loses its power when you trust your perception. Blame loses its grip when you recognize projection. Emotional hooks fall away when you stop internalizing their narratives. This leaves them with fewer tools. They cannot easily bend reality when the other person is grounded. Your calm awareness becomes a mirror reflecting back behavior they prefer not to see. This exposure is intolerable because it bypasses performance. You are no longer responding to the mask. You are responding to the pattern. That distinction matters. It means their usual strategies fail. Charm feels empty. Intimidation feels transparent. Silence feels revealing rather than powerful. The more regulated and clear you become, the more dysregulated they often feel internally. This is why clarity so often leads to withdrawal or avoidance. You are not provoking conflict. You are removing the fog that made the dynamic possible. In doing so, you inadvertently expose the gap between who they claim to be and how they actually behave. That gap is saturated with shame. Rather than face it, they distance themselves from the source of exposure. Your clarity does not punish them directly. It simply removes the protection of illusion. And without illusion, the narcissistic structure has nothing left to hide behind. Silence and disappearance in narcissistic dynamics are rarely about peace, maturity, or emotional resolution. They are strategic responses to internal threat, designed to regain a sense of control when engagement becomes too risky. When a narcissist goes quiet, withdraws abruptly, or vanishes without explanation, it is often because interaction no longer serves their psychological needs. The silence is not empty. It is loaded with intention, even if that intention is not fully conscious. Engagement is the lifeblood of the narcissistic system. Attention, reaction, conflict, admiration, and even distress from others help regulate their inner world. As long as there is exchange, they feel anchored. When that exchange begins to expose them rather than stabilize them, silence becomes a shield. Disappearance allows them to step out of a situation where they feel seen, questioned, or emotionally cornered. It is an exit that avoids accountability while preserving the illusion of power. Silence also functions as narrative control. By disappearing, they prevent further information from entering the story. There are no conversations that might challenge their version of events, no moments where empathy might be expected, no opportunities for you to articulate your experience. The absence creates ambiguity, and ambiguity can be shaped. In their mind, leaving first feels safer than being left or exposed. Psychologically, silence reduces stimulation. Shame, anger, and fear of inadequacy are intense emotional states. Cutting contact lowers the emotional temperature. It gives their nervous system relief without requiring growth. Rather than processing discomfort, they avoid the trigger entirely. This is why silence can follow moments where you spoke calmly, set boundaries, or refused to engage in circular arguments. The threat was not your tone, it was the loss of control. Disappearance is also a way to freeze the dynamic at a tolerable point. As long as there is no further interaction, they do not have to update their self-image. They can hold on to a version of themselves that feels less fractured. In this sense, silence is not strength. It is preservation. It allows them to survive psychologically without confronting the consequences of their behavior. For the person left behind, the silence feels like abandonment. For the narcissistic structure, it is protection. Not from you, but from the internal collapse that engagement would require them to face. Loss of control is one of the most powerful triggers of narcissistic shame because control is not just a preference, it is a psychological necessity. Control over perception, outcomes, and emotional tone allows the narcissistic structure to feel stable and superior. When that control slips, it exposes vulnerability that has been aggressively defended against for years. The moment they realize they can no longer influence how you see them, how you respond, or how the story unfolds, shame begins to surface. This shame does not arise because they suddenly understand the harm they caused. It arises because the system they rely on to manage self-worth is failing. Control has functioned as a substitute for emotional regulation. By controlling others, they avoid confronting insecurity, inadequacy, or dependency. When control fails, those avoided feelings rush in all at once. The internal experience can feel chaotic, humiliating, and destabilizing. What often triggers this shift is subtle. You stop reacting emotionally. You no longer explain yourself. You hold boundaries without anger. You disengage without drama. These behaviors communicate something profoundly threatening. They no longer have access to you as a regulatory tool. They cannot provoke, soothe themselves through dominance, or restore balance through manipulation. The loss is not of you as a person, but of the function you served. Shame intensifies because loss of control also means loss of narrative authority. They cannot as easily rewrite events when you are no longer participating. They cannot elicit responses that confirm their version of reality. This leaves them alone with the discrepancy between who they believe they are and what the situation now reflects back to them. That discrepancy is experienced as exposure. Rather than tolerate this exposure, defenses escalate. They may withdraw, attack, devalue, or abruptly detach. These reactions are attempts to regain control by eliminating the source of discomfort. In some cases, they will seek new environments or relationships where control feels more attainable, not because the previous one lacked value, but because it demanded accountability they could not sustain. Understanding this reframes the experience of being discarded or avoided. It is not a reflection of your worth or your failure to hold on. It is evidence that control was the glue holding the dynamic together. When that glue dissolved, shame flooded in. And rather than face that internal reckoning, they chose distance over reflection, power over repair, and escape over transformation. Rewriting the story is not a casual habit in narcissistic dynamics. It is a survival mechanism. When reality threatens the narcissistic self-image, the mind reorganizes events in a way that protects identity rather than truth. This is not done with calm reflection or deliberate honesty. It happens quickly, defensively, and often feels absolutely true to them. The goal is not accuracy. The goal is emotional preservation. The original version of events may contain moments of cruelty, contradiction, dependence, or failure. Those moments activate shame. To live with them would require acknowledging limits, vulnerability, or harm caused to another person. Because the narcissistic structure cannot integrate those experiences without destabilizing, the mind edits them out. Roles are reassigned, motives are inverted, responsibility is displaced, you become the problem, they become the victim, the misunderstood one, or the one who had no choice. This rewriting serves multiple functions. Internally, it allows them to maintain a sense of coherence and superiority. Externally, it recruits others into validating the revised narrative, reinforcing the false self through agreement and sympathy. The more the story is repeated, the more solid it feels. Over time, it replaces lived reality. This is why confronting them with facts rarely works. You are not arguing with memory, you are arguing with a defense structure. Erasing or minimizing your perspective is a crucial part of this process. If your experience were allowed equal weight, the narrative would fracture. Your feelings, boundaries, or clarity would introduce complexity they cannot tolerate. Distancing from you makes the rewrite easier. Without your presence, there is no competing version to challenge the internal script. Silence protects the story. This is also why you may feel disoriented after the relationship ends. You remember events vividly while they seem to genuinely believe a different version. This disconnect is not because you imagined things. It is because one person is integrating experience and the other is editing it to survive emotionally. Understanding this helps remove the urge to correct the record. Truth does not need to be defended to exist. Their rewritten story may allow them to function, but it also traps them in repetition. Without confronting reality, there is no learning, no repair, and no growth. The story stays intact, but the self remains unchanged. When you begin to heal from a narcissistic dynamic, something subtle but powerful happens that often goes unnoticed by you but is deeply felt by the other person. Your healing is not just an internal process. It changes your emotional posture, your nervous system, and the way you show up in the world. You become less reactive, less available for emotional chaos, and less willing to absorb blame that does not belong to you. This shift quietly exposes what was previously hidden. For the narcissistic structure, your healing functions like an unspoken comparison. Not a competition you are participating in, but a contrast that highlights stagnation. As you process, reflect, and integrate your experience, they are confronted with the fact that growth is possible and they are not engaging in it. This does not register as inspiration, it registers as threat. Your movement forward mirrors their emotional immobility. Healing involves facing pain, grief, and loss directly. It requires tolerating uncomfortable emotions without externalizing them. This is precisely what the narcissistic system avoids. When they see you doing the work they have spent a lifetime evading, it activates shame. Not because you are doing anything to them, but because your progress highlights the cost of their avoidance. You become